Hello guys, my name is Laura Della Figa, with student ID number is 24055311024. Now I will present a material about friction force. Okay, first is definition of friction force is obsessed the motion or tendency of motion of an object. It occurs due to connect between two surfaces and its direction is always opposite to the direction of motion or applied force. Now, the explanation of friction is caused by microscopic roughness where surface interlock and occurs on both rough and smooth surface. The magnitude of friction depends on material type, surface rigidness, normal force or Fn, and whether the object is moving or stationary. Now, example of surface influence is the triple plywood, through large friction, glass is smooth, small friction, sandy surface, very high friction, and a wall block side easier on the glass than on triple. Okay, now we move to the type of friction. A is the static friction, is act when the object is not moving. It adjusts itself to match the applied force until its maximum point. And the last is hikes just before motion begins. Next, B is the kinetic friction, where when the object is already moving, has a constant value during uniform motion and always less than maximum static friction. For the formulas, static friction formulas is Fs equals mu s times F. Explanation, Fs is the maximum static friction, mu x is static friction coefficient, Fn is the normal force. Next, we move to the kinetic friction formula, where Fk is equals mu k times F, and where Fk is the kinetic friction, mu k is the kinetic friction coefficient, and the last is Fn is the normal force. Okay, you can see in the screen the difference between glass and plywood surface. For the glass surface, glass has a very smooth and slippery surface. Because of the smoothness, the microscopic contact between the wood block and the glass is minimal, resulting in a smaller friction force. Therefore, a smaller pulling force is required to make the block start moving. And the plywood or triplex surface is the plywood has a rugged and more textured surface. This ruggedness interests the microscopic interaction between the plywood and the wooden block, producing a large friction force. As a result, a greater pulling force is needed to move the block. And you can see again in the screen, glass is the lower friction, that's really smoother, and the second is the plywood, the higher friction rugged. Okay, next we move to the experiment for the friction force by team 5. Now, one is objective, to measure the amount of force required to pull a wood block on a table. Second is to determine the coefficient of static and kinetic friction for divergent material, wedge, and contact surface. And 2 is the basic concept. Friction is a force that opposes the motion or the tendency of motion between two surfaces is contact. There are two types of friction discussed in this experiment. One is the static friction, which acts when the object has not yet moved. Kinetic friction, which acts when the object is already moving. The magnitude of friction depends on the nature of the surface and the normal force acting on the object. Now, tool and material first is wooden block, spring scale, like string, stopwatch, balance or measurement, flat surface, inclined plane, small pulley is the optional, and glass triplet wouldn't serve. But in this experiment, we use a triplet. Okay, for the experiment procedure is the two. For the first is static friction, where 1. Prepare an inclined plane, 2. Place the block on the plane, 3. Set an initial angle, example is 30 degree, slowly increase the angle, note the angle at which the block begins to move, and repeat the experiment 3 until 5 times on divergence surface, and use the critical angle to calculate the static friction coefficient. And the determining kinetic friction, use a flat surface again, and place the block on the test surface, attach a spring scale to the block, pull the block until it moves at constant speed. Record the force shown on the spring scale and repeat with divergent surface. Use the average pulling force to calculate the kinetic friction coefficient. Now we move to calculation. You can see in the calculation the coefficient in this experiment use the formula U mu s equals F max over V, which compares the maximum pulling force required to start moving the wooden block with its weight. Since both the pulling force and the block mass were recorded in the graphs, the value can be directly divided without any until conversion. In this first trial, the block had a mass 128 gram and the maximum pulling force was 89.6 gram, resulting is 0.7. And you can see in the second trial, 3 and other. And you can see again in the kinetics and this the statics. For the last is the conclusion. Friction opposes the motion of object. Static friction is greater than kinetic friction, and friction coefficient depends on surface material, mass, surface thickness. And the last is friction values can be determined through first in inclined plane method is or static friction, and constant pulling force method or kinetic friction. And thank you for your see my video. See you next video. Bye bye.